Now, speaking about no guarantees, Brett, let's go into college basketball where we have seen upsets, we've seen some chaos, and going into the next best bet bracket challenge heading into the final weekend, we have a few scenarios of who could win, including Wayne Barker, who picked Villanova to win his bracket, but he's currently sitting on top, and there is a route for him to still win, even with Gonzaga bettors like yourself, Gonzaga champs who picked Gonzaga to win, nipping at his heels a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Higgins, we figured out that we didn't throw in a tiebreaker. So me and Chris Whitney are sitting on pins and needles during this Baylor Houston game because we both need Baylor to get there to, I guess, tie for the the championship in our bracket.
Yes, and then there's Matt Gilder, who, if Houston beats Baylor, that's good for him because he has Gonzaga and Houston in his championship game. And potentially that could help him. Obviously, he would still need Gonzaga to win. Wayne Barker needs Gonzaga because he has them in his championship game. But if Houston were to win it all, or even if Baylor were to win it all in that scenario, he would be our champion despite not having the correct champion picked. An interesting scenario we have with three scenarios, four people to play. I said when we made this, Brett, that the winner could potentially come on the podcast if they would like. You're in a position where win or lose, you will be on the podcast, but we might have a third guest or another guest coming on in the near future, depending on how this all shakes out.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. But let's get to our picks, Higgins.
Yeah, let's talk about the Final Four. The first game's going to be the Houston Baylor game on Saturday. That's a 5:15 Eastern Time start, 2:15 Pacific. And I don't think that Houston is going to do to Baylor what they've been able to do through much of their bracket so far. I mean, the Houston defense has been really good. They played fantastic against Oregon State, against Syracuse, against Rutgers, but the Baylor Bears, they're just a different animal. They average over 80 points per game and only -5 on the spread. I think this is just going to be a much different game than how Houston has played so far in this tournament, and I don't know if they can keep up, so I'm going to be taking the Bears at -5.
Yeah, I think Houston has a lot of talent, Higgins. They've done well in the transfer market. Quentin Grimes was a former 5 star. Dijon has been fantastic for Houston. He came over from UMass, I believe. So, they have talent, but Baylor's a different level to your point. Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler have been fantastic all year. They have depth on the bench with Mayer and a few other guys. So I'm really high on Baylor. I actually stayed off the -5 just because I'm actually going to be on the Gonzaga -14 in the next one, Higgins. And honestly, I was like 19 points is where I have to draw the line in the Final Four. So if I'm eating up 14 with Gonzaga, there weren't very many left over for me to take with Baylor. But I do think Baylor ends up in the championship game. So maybe I do something like we talked about earlier with a parlay banker and take that Baylor -215 and do something with that.
I was just about to bring that up. -215, if the Lightning example I gave of -400 is a little too much juice for you to want to use in a parlay, a -215 sounds like a pretty good starting block for a parlay as well. Would probably have to go across a few different sports, though, because, I mean, Gonzaga at -1200 is not necessarily the best team to add to that parlay. Not a lot of value to be added to that. But if you want to go across a few sports, a -215 would be an excellent parlay banker, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But like I said, Higgins, in the night game, UCLA, Gonzaga, Gonzaga's laying 14. I don't care. I just think they're that good. And I've loved UCLA. I've loved that. And I'll bring it up again. These guys have played together since high school, Higgins. They've got, 4 or 5 guys from the Compton Magic AAU program all playing on this UCLA Bruins Final Four team. They've got, top 100 guys who are highly thought of, like Tiger Campbell and Mac Etienne. So Johnny Juzang. So I mean, they're really talented, but this Gonzaga team is on another level. Jalen Suggs is a potential number one overall pick. Cody Kispert's a stud. Timmy's a stud. Yaya is a stud. Like, they're loaded up in Spokane.
I'm not confident enough to really go on either side of this spread, but I would say that I am hoping that you're wrong and UCLA would cover because I'm taking over 145 and a half. And if Gonzaga runs away with this, that's going to be a little harder to cover, I think, unless Gonzaga just goes out there and scores 90, then who knows? UCLA could still put up 60 and it still hits the over. But I expect this to be a little closer of a game. Gonzaga's ran through a lot of their competition so far, but UCLA, they've just been that miracle team. And this is a culture of a program that even though they may not have the most recent experience getting to this length in the tournament, they have plenty of alum that they could talk to about experience with this. 19 Final Four appearances for the Bruins. Now, that does include 11 straight when during the John Wooden era, obviously, but over 145 and a half for a UCLA team that has really just hit its stride, did a first four from the bubble team to a serious contender. I like it. I like the story. I like their offense and what I've seen from them to be able to adapt to different styles of play. And I hope they do keep up with this Gonzaga team and make it an interesting game rather than a snooze fest. So give me the over 145 and a half.
Yeah, I respect everything you're saying about the UCLA Bruins, Higgins. I'm a fan of Mick Cronin as well. Like, a lot of people didn't think it would work. Him being a Cincinnati guy for so long and then going to the West Coast, but he's here in the Final Four in year two. But maybe if they're playing Baylor or Houston, I think differently. But unfortunately, they're running into the best team in college basketball on Saturday night. Doesn't mean they can't cover. Anything can happen in a single game. But if these teams played 10 times, UCLA covers once, twice. I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Now, before we get out of our college basketball, though, Brett, you have Gonzaga in your bracket, so I would assume, like you've been riding with them for much of the tournament, you're probably going to ride with them in that championship game, depending on what the lines are. I can tell you, Baylor and Gonzaga were supposed to play earlier this season. That game got canceled. I like Baylor in that position. I'd be the contrarian to what we see in our bracket. Gonzaga as a program has never won a national championship. That is a lot of pressure to put onto a mid-major school like this that doesn't really get a lot of pressure throughout the regular season, even though they tried to schedule some harder games that all got canceled because of COVID. Baylor, they run through the Big 12. I think that it's not as big of a stage for them, and we remember what happened the last time Gonzaga, the only time Gonzaga made it to a championship game.
Yeah, I mean, none of what you said concerns me whatsoever, to be honest. I can point to a lot of negative reasons to doubt the Baylor Bears. I don't need to bring it all up, but yeah, nah, not for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough.